or MRO or anything that may be related to greenfield projects?
Okay, well, let's step back a second. The industry has spent about $7.5 billion over the last 12 months adding new capacity. And, that's about 80 million units of passenger and about 7 million of truck and bus tires. And this is now the second straight year that we've seen investments at that kind of the 7 billion level and beyond. So I think the industry, while you may be seeing a lull, if you take it in historic terms, we've just had a really good last 24 months of capital influx into the industry. I think a lot of people, they're preparing for the future, and a lot of that future is represented really in two areas. Certainly the emerging markets. Everybody talks about China. We all are a bit, I think, apprehensive right now with what's going on in China. What will that bring as far as overall, capacity utilization as we go forward? So I can see the lull in the marketplace to a small extent, but I think the companies have really prepared themselves for the future and have already done the investments, and they don't need to continue to ramp up at the kind of pace that we've seen over the last 24 months. So as far as greenfield, et cetera, I think that, most of the investments that were announced are going through. There may be one or two that people are putting on the back burner for now, but I think it's more in anticipation of maybe what's happening in raw material to see if the market will allow, price increases to take effect so that these investments, can pay for themselves as we go forward.
Yeah, so if price of oil goes up or natural rubber production, doesn't yield, I guess, what it was supposed to, or whatever you're saying, that
right.
Increase in raw material then will actually cause them not to be able to do more capital expansion and investment. So, understand?
Yeah, so there's usually a 2 or 3 year lag between, when price, raw material costs are finally get to the end user. And so we've had this increase, in 16 and part of 17, and the companies really haven't recouped that, at this point. We do see raw materials now moderating. You see the pullback in oil. How long is that going to last? I'll let you guys decide that. I got my own opinions. And then, natural rubber has also, moved back from what was a reasonable level. We're really, if you take inflation into account, kind of do an average dollar scenario, raw or natural rubber is still very, very low right now, and there's only, I think, upward potential in that area, and that's probably the single biggest issue other than oil that you need to look at and where it's heading as we go forward.
Okay. So right now you're kind of thinking that it's maybe flattening out more than a deep down cycle with regard to investment, or it's just too hard to tell? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just everybody's anticipating what was going to happen with China. They were expecting to get in the early 2020s selling 30 million vehicles a year. Now, there's been really that pullback really from the first time in, 10 or 12 years where their year over year growth is not in double digits. and everybody's finally getting its act together, and they've been depressed for so long that you'll see them go back up, which will help the global numbers as well. So not a huge activity until the mega trends start actually occurring, and those include what's going to be the impact of car sharing and those kinds of things as we move forward.
Okay.
Inside EMEA.
Yeah, for Europe, do you see anything changing as far as their demand?
If anything, I think their demand flatlines or goes down. They've had a couple of good years here, so I'm not expecting them, at least in the OE arena, to really do much
I think
in that particular market.
Germany had it was almost a similar program as like Cash for Clunkers, but this is for the
older diesel.
The older diesels.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that could have an impact for sure. So we'll see if Bosch just came out with, there's a retrofit that you may be able to do. So, there's a lot of technology potential changes that at least the people that are in the market are hoping that goes through, that doesn't eliminate the diesel.
Okay. So for overall capital purchases, do you see a lot? Yeah, I don't think you stated before that you don't see a lot being canceled or deferred, or do you think that there's some greenfield expansion that's been deferred or canceled?
I think the only ones that are being deferred or canceled are maybe, some of the weaker players that, may have thought that their market was really going to grow. And, I'm going to suggest some of the Chinese manufacturers that, the government is certainly saying, kind of like what they did on the auto side, to, okay, we want to pick the winners and the losers in the marketplace and not have so many different manufacturers going forward. So if there were some expansions in those tier 2, tier 3 guys within the Chinese environment, there certainly could be some reductions. There's no question there's a lot of overcapacity there, and there's no need to bring more, because I'm little company Y and I'm going to kill the market, and so I'm going to go ahead and put a bunch of capex in and get more capacity. I think there are cases of that occurring right now.
Do you foresee that Triangle Tire and Century and Wan Li and also GIT, I had done it already, but their expansion into the U.S., do you think that's going to stop, or do you think that's still going to probably proceed?
No, I think that'll proceed. No different. It's the same thing that what happened to the Japanese auto industry and will now happen with the Chinese auto industry, where they're going to want to act like, what's called multi-domestic manufacturers. In other words, they have international operations because there's a political need to be viewed as a local manufacturer for the consumer base that exists in those locales. The U.S. has always been one that, the consumer has been willing to accept foreign product a lot more than the other end of the spectrum, like in Japan, where they're very nationalistic in, who they're going to support, as a consumer buying products in the marketplace. So I don't think the GTs of the world, et cetera, are going to cancel their plans here in the States. I think there's too much on the line. It's the most valuable market, from a tire perspective, just because of the number of, high value added tires that are needed in the marketplace. And it's stable. It's one that you can count on overall. And so